Hi, everyone. Today I will be reading another fairy tale, maybe one that not as many people have been exposed to. So I'm reading it from the Treasury of Stories for Children, by Nancy Christensen Hall. And so this is if you have a kid who's kind of sensitive, maybe not read them this story or have them watch this one because something kind of awful happens to the Goose Girl's horse. It might be a little creepy for some kids. I don't know. I always try to be really sensitive about stuff like that because when I was a kid, I had a bad experience with a movie that was supposed to be family friendly and it scared me and I had nightmares for years. So, you know, if you're having a kid watch it, just, think about, your kid, hopefully, and if they're sensitive or if they're not. But it is a Brothers Grimm story, and it is not one of the edited Brothers Grimm stories. This is not Disney. So I am going to go ahead and read you the story. First, I'll start off, show you the art right here. And it's in my other, like, really huge fairy tale book. So I will show you some of the art from that book too. All right. There once was an old queen whose husband had been dead for many years, and she had a beautiful daughter who was betrothed to a prince. Hope you can hear this. Let me do this. I'm going to push this back a little bit. All right. I'm going to start over again. There once was an old queen whose husband had been dead for many years, and she had a beautiful daughter who was betrothed to a prince in a distant country. Although she loved her daughter dearly, the queen was too old to accompany her daughter on the long journey. So she sent a waiting woman to travel with her and put the princess's hand into that of the bridegroom. This waiting woman was very strong, that she might protect and care for the princess. The queen gave to each a horse. The princess's horse was called Falada, and it could speak. When the hour of departure came, the princess mounted her horse and set out for her bridegroom's country. When they had ridden for a time, the princess became very thirsty and said to the waiting woman, "Get down and fetch me some water in my cup from the stream. I must have something to drink." "If you are thirsty," said the waiting woman, "dismount yourself, lie down by the water, and drink. I don't choose to be your servant." So, in her great thirst, the princess dismounted and stooped down to the stream and drank, since she was not to have her golden cup. Now, when she was about to mount Falada, the waiting woman said, "Falada belongs to me now. This jade will do for you." The poor little princess protested, but was obliged to give way. Then the waiting woman, in a harsh voice, ordered her to take off her royal robes and to put on the servant's own mean garments. Finally, she forced her to swear before heaven that she could not tell a creature at the court what had taken place. If she would not take the oath, she would be killed on the spot. But Falada saw all this. The waiting woman then mounted Falada and put the real bride on her poor jade, and they continued their journey. There was a great rejoicing when they arrived at the castle. The princess hurried towards them and lifted the waiting woman from her horse. I'm sorry, let me go back. The prince hurried towards them and lifted the waiting woman from her horse, thinking she was his bride. She was led upstairs, but the real princess had to stay below. The old king looked out the window and saw the delicate, pretty creature standing in the courtyard, so he arranged that she might help a lad named Conrad, who looked after the geese. Here's a picture of, if you get that closer. Soon after, the false bride said to the husband to be, "Dear prince, I pray you to do me a favor." He answered, "That will I gladly." "Well, then, let the knacker be called to cut off the head of the horse I rode. It angered me on the way." Really, she was afraid that the horse would speak and tell of her treatment of the princess, and so it was settled that the faithful Falada would die. When this came to the ear of the real princess, she promised the knacker a piece of gold if he would do her a service. There was a great dark gateway to the town, through which she had to pass every morning and evening. "Will you nail up Falada's head in this gateway so that I might see him as I passed?" she asked. The knacker promised to do so as she wished, and when the horse's head was cut off, he hung it up in the dark gateway. In the early morning, when she and Conrad went through the gateway, she said in passing, "Alas, dear Falada, there thou hangest." And the head answered, "Alas, queen's daughter, there thou gangest. If thy mother knew thy fate, her heart would break and grief with grief so great." Then they passed on out of the town, right into the fields with the geese, and then they tended the geese till the evening. When they got home, Conrad went to the old king and said, "I won't tend the geese with that maiden again. She frightens me." When the old king then ordered him to say what she did to frighten him, Conrad said, "In the morning, when we passed under the dark great gateway with the geese, she talked to a horse's head, which was hung up on the wall. She said, 'Alas, dear Falada, there thou hangest.' And the head answered, 'Alas, queen's daughter, there thou gangest. If thy mother knew thy fate, her heart would break with grief so great.'" The old king ordered Conrad to go out the next day as usual. He then placed himself behind the dark gateway and heard the princess speaking to Falada's head. Thereupon he went away unnoticed, and in the evening, when the goose girl came home, he called her aside and asked why she did all this. "That I may not tell you, nor may I tell any human creature, for I have sworn it under the open sky, because if I had not done so, I should have lost my life." He gave her no peace, but she would not break her oath. Then he said, "If you won't tell me, then tell your sorrows to the iron stove there." And he went away. So she crept up to the stove, and beginning to weep and lament, unburdened her heart to it, saying, "Here I am, forsaken by all the world, and yet I am a princess. A false waiting woman brought me to such a pass that I had to take off my royal robes. Then she took my place with my bridegroom, while I have to do mean service as a goose girl. If my mother knew, it would break her heart." The old king stood outside by the pipes of the stove and heard all that she had said. Then he came back, had royal robes put upon her, and called his son. He told him that he had a false bride, who was only a waiting woman. The true bride was the goose girl. The young prince was charmed by her youth and beauty, and a great banquet was prepared, to which all the courtiers and good friends were bidden. The bridegroom sat at the head of the table, while the princess on one side and the waiting woman was on the other. But the waiting woman was so dazzled that she did not recognize the princess. When they had eaten and drunk, and were all very merry, the old king put a riddle to the waiting woman. "What does a person deserve who deceives his master?" The false bride answered, "He must be put stark naked into a barrel stuck with nails, and made to walk through the streets until he starves." "Then that is your own doom," said the king, "and the judgment shall be carried out." When the sentence was fulfilled, the young prince married his true bride, and they ruled their kingdom together in peace and happiness. There is the goose girl with the prince. I don't know if you can see in the background, but the king is admonishing, that's a lovely word, the waiting woman in the background. I'm going to show you a few other pictures. So this is from the Joy of Fairy Tales. So this one and it's supposed to be her tending the geese. And I think there's one more. There you go. There you go. Okay. Not sure what I'll read tomorrow, but I'll try to find something. Bye. Have a good day. Be well.